We welcome now Ben Milam, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Hey, Gerard. Happy Friday, man.
What's going on, Big Ben? I see you got your Southern Mississippi polo shirt on there.
Sure do. It's
ready for the
game week.
Golden Eagles in action.
Big one against South Florida this weekend, trying to go 2-1 on the year against a really good South Florida team that played toe-to-toe with Alabama for most of the game last weekend. So that's a big one for Will Hall and the Golden Eagles, but plenty more going on in the state. We've got a lot of big stories this week. This week has kind of felt like a month in a lot of ways. The first big thing, obviously, was Hurricane Francine making landfall in Louisiana, making its way across Mississippi Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning. It obviously dissipated into a tropical depression Thursday afternoon. The great news is that no one was killed, no one was severely injured. As far as the reports that we have gotten, Tate Reeves released a statement yesterday afternoon that there were no reported injuries or deaths in this storm. That's obviously the first thing you look at, but there were plenty of Mississippians affected by this, as you would assume in a Category 2 hurricane. Most of it was heavy rainfall and some wind stuff, a little bit of flooding, particularly in South Mississippi. The peak was about a little over 60,000 Mississippians without power due to, again, mostly the rain and the wind knocking over power lines and such. But thankfully, no severe damage, no real big stories to cover in terms of what this storm did to the state. We've had some counties in South Mississippi on the coast reporting minimal damage, which is always the phrase you want to hear after a big hurricane. And, we talked to some people on the coast ahead of the storm as it was making landfall. And every time you really just hear the word hurricane and see the forecast and the radar, you see the hurricane moving towards Mississippi, you think Katrina, you think Camille, and you kind of brace for impact and everybody kind of tightens up a little bit. But now I think we can sort of breathe out and look back and be thankful that the storm is not worse than some of those other storms in the past. Yeah,
and certainly always a possibility. We're in the thick of hurricane season right now. I mean, right now, looking at the forecast way out in the future, possibility, but nothing right now that says this is going to the Gulf and going to impact us.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have reported in previous months this summer that most, if not all, experts out of the National Hurricane Center and out of other organizations said this was going to be one of the busiest hurricane seasons we've seen in 20-plus years. And we've only had 2 named hurricanes so far this season. We certainly hope that theme continues, but we hope those experts continue to be wrong. There is another tropical depression that is being tracked moving towards the Gulf of Mexico. It's too far out to really have a whole lot of substantive information about what that's going to turn into. But a lot of experts said, we had a really quiet month after the first storm, the first named hurricane of the season, and they said, well, this silent period, if you will, is going to result in a much more intense month and a half, rest the back half of this hurricane season. And some of them said Francine's kind of the beginning of that. And so we have, I mentioned that tropical depression. There are a couple of other storms in that area they're tracking. But again, hopefully they are wrong, and they've been, for the most part, wrong so far. And I think they would tell you, too, they hope to be wrong as well.
Well, it's a little early to predict exact circumstances, but certainly get it. All right, what's this up with? You guys wrote an article on severe threats of violence in some of Mississippi schools this week. Yeah, this is. I think there's going to be more, hopefully, more clarity that is unrolled from this. It's a long list. 7 threats of violence in Mississippi schools this week. One of them being a student wielding a firearm at another student in the school bathroom. But the other 6 were social media postings, and one of them was on TikTok and mentioning that around 9/11 or on 9/11 there was going to be
a school shooting. That was at Betty Mae Jack Middle School in Morton. It was based on a TikTok video. It was brought to the attention of school officials. Ended up not being anything to that, and that's true for the other 5 as well. There's been some sort of threat posted on social media that has alerted officials, alerted students. But again, thankfully, there's been nothing to those threats. But, you hear the word social media and you see kind of a theme like this and start to wonder, you've had all of these wild social media challenges or games that middle schoolers or high schoolers play that have serious consequences, and you certainly hope that this is not one of those where, I don't know, you post something online and get out of class or whatever it is. Most of these schools have gone on lockdown, and just about all of these officials have used these threats and lockdowns as a chance to highlight the seriousness of doing that. Obviously, you want to be more safe. You want to err on the side of caution when you do see a school threat. But man, when you cry wolf over and over again, at some point, hopefully not, but at some point there could be a real threat that maybe delays the response to that because you've had past threats that have not been substantiated. And so, yeah, it's concerning. We had 4 in the first 2 days of this week on Monday and Tuesday. And certainly hope this is something that is being addressed, and that, again, is not something that's going to continue because it's some sort of social media challenge. That is a personal thought from me, that it just seems like maybe that's something going on in that realm, but hopefully not, because that is obviously a very serious thing. But the good part of that is there has been no actual violence carried out in these schools, and obviously this follows on the heels of the school shooting in Georgia last week, where 2 students and 2 teachers were killed in the school shooting. That is going to heighten, the response and the feelings and the intensity surrounding these threats, whether they're real or not.
Yeah. So, Ben, have there been any action taken by the schools that they've reported and sort of in response to these threats?
Yeah, for the most part, they've been largely quiet. There was one of these, and I have it in front of me. I want to make sure I get the school correct. At Provine High School, there were 2 unnamed or unidentified intruders that were arrested, and as far as we know, that's the only arrest that has been made from these threats. Again, there was no violence carried out in that, but that initially it seemed much more serious. There were rumors that a security guard had been stabbed and someone had an assault rifle in the school, and we've had no official reports that was true, and no further information, really. And when you deal with stuff in school systems, when there are minors involved, you're going to get less information just because there are minors involved. But we've had no reports of anything further than those 2 arrests.
Okay. All right, so what's this deal with Horn Lake alderman that was indicted for defrauding some unemployment benefits?
Yeah, that's right. Well, first of all, we have had a lot of COVID-19 fraud since 2020. I know you know that.
Yep.
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars have been uncovered, and that's just what has been uncovered in investigations of fraudulent benefits received or unemployment benefits, or embezzlement in some cases. There's just been tons of it. So yep. The latest of which in Mississippi was Charles Roberts, a former Horn Lake alderman, being indicted by the state auditor's office on Wednesday. It would have been Wednesday. And he was arrested on the indictment of those charges. It was for the improper or fraudulent receiving of unemployment benefits while he was employed by the city, and did not report that income, allegedly. And then yesterday, Charles Roberts and his attorney, Tony Faris, came out and said, we paid this back already. And the check cleared. in July. To give you some of those official numbers, he paid back $16,948 to settle the discrepancy, and then was promptly arrested when he thought this was over. And so this is another story I would expect to continue. The attorney, Tony Faris, kind of lashed out at State Auditor Shad White about improper investigation of this case, saying that they had already paid it back. So we'll see what happens next.
Man, oh man. Ben, appreciate the update.
Always
Thanks
a pleasure,
for coming
Gerard.
in.
Thank you.
Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.